at 9 a.m. If I could have a mover to convene the Court of Revision for the Wright Municipal Drain 2021. So, Member Townsend? And a seconder, please.
Yes, I'd like to move Rebecca Herger as the chair of the committee.
Hang on. We'll get there. We'll just call to order first.
Oh, sorry.
Member Hutchinson, you'll second that?
Yes, I'll second that.
And that the Court of Revision for the Wright Municipal Drain 2021 hereby convenes at 9 a.m. All in favor? That's carried. And I would just like to take a moment to introduce the members of our Court of Revision. We have on the court, appointed by council, Councillor Stephen Townsend, Councillor Rebecca Hergert, and Councillor Doug Hutchinson. Joining us today also is drainage engineer, Mr. William Dietrich, and on the call as well is our drainage superintendent, Mr. Stephen Cobain. So now the first order of business is to nominate a chair to carry on the rest of the court. Would anybody like to move a nomination? Mr. Townsend?
Sorry, I got a little ahead of myself, but
that's okay.
Yeah, I would recommend that Rebecca Herbert is hereby appointed as chair of the Court of Revision for the Wright Municipal Drain 2021.
Okay. Are you seconding that, Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay. And Member Herger, are you willing to take on the role of chair for today's court?
I am having some technical difficulty. It does appear as though I'm able to participate, maybe without the video, but I am most certainly participating.
Okay.
And I would be willing to take the chair.
Awesome. All in favor?
Yes.
And that is carried. So the next order of business, Chair Hergert, I'll pass that over to you, is the declaration of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Clerk. Are there any members declaring a pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Not seeing any, and if the opportunity arises or the need arises, we can always make that declaration. So if I can go to the chair for the purpose and the background of this meeting, I will turn it to Clerk Harback.
Thank you, Chair Hergert. The purpose of the Court of Revision meeting is to hear appeals to the schedule of assessment of the Wright Municipal Drain 2021, serving parts of lots 29 to 30, concession 9, and parts of lots 28 to 31, concession 10 in the municipality of West Grey, former township of Normanby, Grey County. Just a little bit of background. 4.1, the Court of Revision jurisdiction. The Court of Revision is an appeal body established under the Drainage Act. It allows for landowners to challenge their drainage assessments. The Court of Revision has one power: to reallocate funds in a drainage assessment schedule. After all appeals are exhausted, Council gives third and final reading to the bylaw. So members of the court may hear appeals on 3 grounds. The first one, land or road has been assessed too high or too low. The second one, land or road should have been assessed but is not. And 3, due consideration has not been given to the land's use. So the members of the court must hear these appeals and decide whether they are valid. The members must comply with the Statutory Powers Procedure Act, and they must conduct themselves fairly and without bias. The court only has the authority to change the schedule of assessments. They cannot make changes to the technical aspects of the report, and they cannot refer the report back to the engineer for modifications. So appeals are required to be submitted in writing to the clerk at least 10 days in advance of the date of the court. Although the court may hear late appeals, we simply need to pass a resolution that says you're allowing that late appeal. Okay, something to keep the court must keep in mind is that the total cost of the project must remain the same. So if an assessment is reduced, the court must reallocate that shortfall among the other assessed property owners. And the engineer's report is also included in the package, and all members of the court and all assessed landowners have been provided a hard copy of that report.
Thank you very much, Clerk. Next at 4.1 is the Court of Revision jurisdiction. I believe that the clerk has covered that. Is there anything further, Clerk, or we're good? Okay. And 4.2 being Mr. Dietrich, the engineer's report regarding the Wright Municipal Drain 2021. And I will turn it over to engineer Mr. Dietrich for a summary of the engineer's report.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point in time, Chair Herget, would you like me to give a review of how we're only dealing with the assessment portion of the project at this point in time, and that's how the costs are distributed. Would you like a review of
Yes,
the assessment of how and a summary of how the assessment was calculated?
that would be perfect. Thank you, sir.
Okay, we've been through the scope of work and what's been proposed. There has been no, and the report's been adopted. So at this point in time, the only changes that could be made to the drainage report is if the court decides to make any changes to the proposed assessment in the drainage report. And I want to make it quite clear that, well, what you're dealing with here today is the numbers that are in this drainage report, not estimates that were given out 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or even 5 years ago. The costs change on any project from start to finish based on sometimes the scope of work changes. For instance, that's going to change the cost of the work. COVID has changed the prices and costs of this project. Maybe some environmental considerations that we had to deal with that have added costs to the project and various permits. So in any event, the final costs are summarized in our drainage report. We've estimated the cost of this project now at $230,000. And we have two appeals on assessment. I'm not sure if they're appealing the increase in costs or they're appealing the numbers in the report. But I'm going to go through the only thing that can be adjusted, obviously, is the distribution of costs in our report. I'm going to start with the two appeals. We have one from Warren. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing this. Is it Grine? Warren Grine? Is that
That's
correct?
Yep.
Okay. Warren Grine and he's representing Alan Murray and Warren, and they own lot 29 of concession 9. Their roll number is 2-064. The second appeal is from Murray and Bonnie Grine, and they own lot 30 concession 9, and their roll number is 2-65. I'm going to be referring to the breakdown of the costs. The assessment schedule for construction shows up in our drainage report on pages 15, 16, and then the costs are summarized on page 17 in the drainage report. So I'm going to go through the breakdown of how the assessment is done, and there was two parts to the project. We have the cost for the work to construct the open channel at the outlet for the closed system, and those costs show up on page 15 of the drainage report. We've estimated, you'll see here under total assessment, which is the total estimated cost for the open portion of the project, at $19,700. The estimate for the closed portion, which is referred to in the drawings and in the report as the main drain closed, is on page 16 of the drainage report, and the total assessment of cost there is $210,300. These costs were assessed under 3 different sections of the Drainage Act, and the sections of the Act that are used to assess costs for this project are benefit, section 22, outlet liability, section 23, and there was a special assessment under section 26 of the Drainage Act. Benefit is defined in the Act as is the means Are there any advantages to any lands, roads, buildings, or other structures from the construction, improvement, repair, or maintenance of a drainage work, such as result in a higher market value or increased crop protection or improved appearance or even better control of surface and subsurface waters? Outlet liability under Section 23, any lands or roads that use the drainage works as an outlet may be assessed outlet liability. In other words, all the lands and roads within the catchment area or the watershed boundary are assessable for outlet assessment. And if there's any lands also outside those boundaries that are using the system for subsurface drainage, they're accessible for outlet assessment as well. And the factors that are used in calculating the outlet liability are where the water enters the drainage system, the area that's being assessed within the watershed boundaries, and also the runoff characteristics of the property. Under Section 26 of the Drainage Act, this only applies where there's increased costs involved to construct the drain. In this case, there's a road crossing under County Road 9. The county is accessible for all the increase of costs, the actual increase of costs for the construction of the drain that's caused by the existence of the road. And those costs are separated in the drainage report and also in the assessment schedule. So we'll go back to page 15. And this, I'll just quickly go through how the assessment was done for the open portion. You'll see here there's two columns. The assessment to the for benefit for this part of the project was assessed as benefit, $5,200, and $14,500 was assessed as outlet liability. And you add the two columns up, you get the total assessment for the open portion, $19,700. You'll see here approximately about 26% of the cost, or about a quarter, was assessed as benefit, and that was assessed directly to Mr. Wright, and that's where the open ditch is being constructed. The rest of the cost, 74%, was assessed to all the lands and roads upstream and that use this open ditch as an outlet. So basically, the open portion is an outlet facility for the new tile system that's being installed, and you'll see that most of the cost was assessed upstream as outlet liability. And then the appellant's share of those costs are also shown there. Under Lot 29 of Concession 9, the assessment to that property was $993 for 3.6 hectares of land. And for 2-65, the assessment was 9.4 hectares of land, $2,650. Just a breakdown, when I talked earlier about the factors that are used to calculate assessment, all agricultural land is factored typically at 1. And if there's lands outside the watershed that are drained in for subsurface drainage, they're factored at approximately 0.5. Roads, in this case, the only other part of the project where roads were involved, we have the County Road 9. It was factored 4 times agricultural land. And so you'll see here that the agricultural assessments here approximately were about $280 a hectare for any lands that are assessed for agricultural purposes, and the Grey County Road was assessed at $11.55. So that's a breakdown of the sharing of cost of the $19,700. Basically, if you got land in the watershed, you're assessed outlet liability based on acreage and where your water enters the drainage system. So the next part of the project is the main drain closed, and the share of the cost distribution is on page 16. There we have we've used 3 different sections of the Drainage Act. There's $109,900 was assessed as benefit, $57,310 outlet assessment, and $43,090 was assessed as a special assessment to the County of Grey under Section 26. So if you add up those 3 columns, you get the estimated cost of the work, and the work includes the construction costs, allowances, administration costs for the construction of the main drain closed part of the project. So if you do first of all, we do the calculations for the special assessment. In this case, was $43,090. That's deducted from the total cost. So what's left over has to be assessed back to the landowners as benefit and outlet. In this case here, we assessed, as I mentioned earlier, $109,900 as benefit assessment. And typically all the properties where the drainage system is being constructed will benefit from the construction of the drain or if they're being given a direct outlet into the drain, they will be assessed a portion of that $109,900 as benefit. In this case, we felt that approximately 2/3 of the cost of the construction of this drainage system should be assessed as benefit, and 1/3 or 34% as outlet. The appellant's assessments show up there again on page 16. The assessment to lot 29, concession 9, was assessed $5,380 as outlet liability assessment. And just below that, you'll see in lot 30 of concession 9, 2-65 was assessed a benefit assessment of $6,000 and $14,359 is outlet assessment. And the reason for the benefit assessment of $6,000, this was assessed because this property will be given a direct outlet into the municipal drain, which will result in better control of the surface and subsurface water coming off the property, and it's direct outlet for this farm. And also to get an outlet for this property, the drain had to be extended from the lot line between lots 29 and 30 upstream to the south side of the road. And just to extend that road, that drainage system, including the road crossing, we had estimated the cost of that extension of $87,100, of which only $6,000 was assessed as benefit to this property. They also received an outlet assessment of $14,359. I think that basically gives you a breakdown of how the assessment was done for the appellant's properties. And if we go to the final summary of costs, they show up on page 17 in the drainage report. And you'll see the net cost to these to the appellants as the one farm is assessed for $4,249, the other $14,640. So if you add those two together, they represent a little over almost $19,000, which represents about 8% of the total cost of this project. In my opinion, the assessment to these farms is fair and equitable. So maybe at this point in time, I'll if there's any questions regarding my presentation, I'll answer those.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dietrich, for your presentation. As we move along in the agenda, number 5 is the Wright Municipal Drain. 5.1 is an appeal, number 1 from Warren Grine, lot 29, concession 9 of West Gray. The appeal was received after the deadline of 10 days prior to the sitting of the Court of Revision. If the court deems it appropriate to hear the appeal, we would need a resolution to allow that. Do I have any members of the court that would make a motion? Member Hutchison?
Member Hutchison, yes, I move that we allow the appeal, considering the deadline was not met, but I would allow it.
Okay, and do I have a seconder for that? Member Townsend, I see you're raising your hand.
Yep, Member Townsend, I will second that.
Okay, and as chair, I'll call the vote for the allowance of the appeal number 1, Warren Grine. All those in favor, raise your hand, please. Member Hergert, yes. So having passed, the Court of Revision for the Wright Municipal Drain will allow Warren Grine to present the late appeal. And Mr. Grine, are you available on the call as well? Mr. Warren Grine, to be specific.
Yes.
Okay, if you would like to go ahead and present your appeal to the Court of Revision at this time.
I guess the appeal is just an understanding of how this was going on. It's been 5 years since the process was started, so it was understanding of this process.
Sorry, Chair, we're not hearing very well. Can you mention that?
Mr. Grine, Mr. Warren, if you are able to speak into the microphone a little more clearly, we're having some difficulty of hearing some and not hearing some information.
So I just really wanted to get a better understanding of how this all works. That, you know, it started out 5 years ago with Mr. and Mrs. Wright's lane, where it was just sort of how things came about. It definitely, it's not, our assessment is very small, but it's just to kind of be heard and hear what clarification of all how this is report has been determined, and Mr. Dietrich has explained that very well. So I would say, you know, I have a better understanding of it now.
And Warren, Grind, do you have any appeal further, or it is just that you have a better understanding at this point?
A better understanding.
Okay, very good. Is there any part of an appeal that you have left, or no?
Oh, I'm fine.
Oh, you're fine. Okay. Thank you very much for taking the time this morning. It has been noted that we do have some difficulty hearing everyone involved. So I was hopeful that anyone who is not actively speaking could shut off their microphones, and then we maybe have a better opportunity to hear the speaker. Okay, so as we move on to 5.2, we have an appeal number 2 from Murray and Bonnie Grine, lot 30, cons 9 in West Gray. This appeal was received after the deadline of the 10 days prior to the sitting of the Court of Revision. If the court deems it appropriate to hear the appeal, we would need a resolution to allow that. Member Hutchison, I see you have your virtual hand raised.
Sorry, it was still up, but I will move to accept this individual to also allow them to speak, given the timeline.
Thank you for moving that, Member Hutchison. Do I have a seconder? Member Townsend, I see your hand.
Member Townsend, yes, I will second that motion.
Okay, and we will call the vote on allowance of appeal number 2. All those in favor, raise your hand. Member Hergert, yes. Seeing that pass, I would like to provide an opportunity to Murray and Bonnie Grine to participate in the Court of Revision to present their appeal. Mr. and Ms. Grine, are you available to join the meeting?
Yes,
Okay, and please go ahead.
it's Bonnie Grind speaking. Thank you for your time. I'm in the same position as Warren, just trying to understand the process. I did not realize that estimates prior to the report would not be considered because there was quite a time length there. And that was one of our major concerns, why it took so long. Is this normal to take this long, 5 years for a drainage process? Just curious, but other than that, I have no further qualms about the appeal, and I thank you for, Bill, for explaining things to us.
Wonderful. And to that point, thank you very much, Bonnie Grine, for participating. I will ask the question to Mr. Dietrich. Is this the normal timeline in which a drain takes to come from petition of members to final assessment on their taxes? Is this normal timeline?
Okay, yeah, I can answer that. Typically, I would, in the past, and I've been in this business quite a long time. I've prepared hundreds and hundreds of drainage reports the last 30 or 40 years, but things are taking longer, and approvals seem to take longer to get. Years ago, we never even needed an approval from DFO. I didn't know the Fisheries Act even applied, for instance, to municipal drains when I first got started in this business back in the 80s and 90s. But that's all changed. So, and all these approvals and meetings with government agencies, and they do take longer today. And then if you get into sometimes if landowners require more input today than we ever in public input to try to come up with a solution. And it seems to be taking longer, but typically, no. I would say most municipal drains now are 2 to 3 years, probably from when appointed to it's finished. Years ago, we get them done maybe in 1 or 2. But yeah, 5 is it's a little longer than normal, I would have to say. But anyway, we're here now, and this is the next step is to get a tendered price on the project if there is no further appeals.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dietrich. Do the members of the court have any questions about the schedule of assessment? This is number 5.3, questions raised by the members. Are there any questions? Mr. Townsend, Member Townsend, I see your hand raised. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to observe that we're not actually receiving a challenge to any of the costs, if I understood everything clearly. So from my perspective, there's no questions.
Very good, thank you. Do the landowners have any questions about the schedule of assessment? And so I'm opening this to the public members. Are there any landowners that have questions about the schedule of assessment? And clerk, I'm just looking through here if there's any hands raised. I'm not seeing any at this time.
I don't see any either, Chair Hergert. I don't see anybody looking, or there's no chats, nothing in the chat function, and no hands raised that I see.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to number 5.5, explanation of assessment by the engineer. I believe we've had a thorough input from Mr. Dietrich. Are there any additions to what you've already presented, Mr. Dietrich?
Chair Hergert, I don't believe so. I think we've I've outlined how the costs were distributed, and I have nothing to add at this point in time.
Okay, and on that 5.6, we have deliberations by the Court of Revisions if required. Clerk, I believe that's unnecessary at this time. Go ahead.
Through you, Chair. It is important to acknowledge at this time, I know it was difficult to hear Mr. Warren Green. Is it both appellants wish, and perhaps I should clarify with one at a time, to withdraw their appeals? Or do the appeals stand? I will, if you're withdrawing your appeal, if you could state that for the record now, and I will require a follow-up in writing. If you'd like deliberation on your appeal, then the court will go ahead with that. So I would ask Mr. Warren Grine.
Yes, I withdraw my appeal, and I can send something to you in writing.
Okay.
Overall, just to mention that there was a culvert when the road was up back in the late 60s for especially Murray's property. The culvert was installed, but it was like 18 inches above the level of the land, so the culvert under the road never been either our side of the road, our properties whatsoever. So having this, my father basically trying to rectify this situation about 30 some years ago, to have somebody come in underneath the road, but it was deemed not worthy at the time. So by all means, this will definitely benefit both farms with having a proper drainage system to benefit the farms. At the moment of the culvert, there is no water from our farms ever going into the drains because water doesn't jump up 18 inches to go into a drain. So that's basically that. I will withdraw my appeal. It's good. And I thank you for letting me speak and appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Grine. And I would also ask confirmation from Mr. Murray and Mrs. Bonnie Grine. Is your intention to formally withdraw your appeal? And if so, if you could state that for the record now and follow up with that in writing, then we'll proceed. If you'd want your appeal to stand, then the court will consider it.
Yes, I will withdraw my appeal. The requirement to follow up in writing, is email sufficient?
Yes, Mrs. Grine, that would be just fine.
Okay, Great, thank you.
Thank you. So back to you, Chair. There is not a requirement to move into a breakout room to deliberate the appeals. Both have been formally withdrawn, and it's up to the court to make a decision now, formally adopting the schedule as prepared by Mr. Dietrich's engineering.
Thank you very much for that help with getting everybody's appeal heard and confirmed. Yes, Member Townsend, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, so if the timing is appropriate, since the appeals have been dropped, I would like to move that the Court of Revision for the Wright Municipal Drain 2021 approves the schedule of assessment as outlined in the report by Dietrich Engineering Limited.
Thank you very much for moving that. Do I have a seconder for that? Member Hutchison, I see your hand raised.
Yes, Member Hutchison, I second that motion. Or
And
recommendation.
are there any questions or comments before I call the vote? Seeing none, I will call the vote on the Court of Revision for the Wright Municipal Drain 2021, approving the schedule of assessments as outlined. Member Hutchison, I see your hand raised. We're calling the vote.
Yes, I'm voting in favor.
Okay, and Member Townsend, voting in
Member Townsend,
favor.
in favor, yes.
And Member Hergert voting in favor. Seeing how that is passed, I will turn it back over to the clerk for any comments or clarifications before we move towards adjournment.
Thank you, Chair Hergert. The written notice of the written decision will be sent out to all assessed landowners. And the next step in our process, as Mr. Dietrich had outlined, is tendering the project. So the deadline for tenders is today at 12 noon. So we'll see what's come in by that time and move forward with that process, hopefully. And that's it. If any members of the court or if any assessed landowners have any questions about the Court of Revision today or the decision or the process, you can certainly call or email anytime. And we are on to adjournment, Chair.
Thank you very much, Clerk. And I will be looking for a motion to adjourn the Court of Revision at 9:33 p.m. Member Hutchison, I see you with your hand up.
Yes, I'd like to move that the Court of Revision now adjourns.
Thank you for that motion. And I see Member Townsend.
Member Townsend, I'll second that motion.
And on the call of the vote, all those in favor, raised hand. And I, Member Hergert, also agree to adjournment. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
Mr.
so much,
Dietrich.
Mr. Dietrich.
Take care. Have a good day.
Have a wonderful day. Bye for now.
Bye for now.